yourself. Why don't you go live yourself? It's just setting up. It says setting up your meeting on YouTube Live. Uh-oh, I think it's about to start. It's about to do the thing that it does.
My screen says we are streaming live.
Yourself. Why don't you go?
Now streaming live yourself.
It's just setting up. It says setting up. All right, so that's always fun. So yeah, why don't you go live yourself? Yeah, that's a good one. I'm gonna start using that one. Anyhow, guys. So yeah, you're watching Pro Tools Talk live. Yeah, with your host Bez. We got Daniel, Fed, and JJ here in the room. Hi. For all the crazy amount of people watching, I just want to say hello. Yeah. So we talk about like Pro Tools and everything else at this Pro Tools Talk. Very like kind of like easygoing. Anything is possible. You never know what we're gonna talk about. Daniel is keeping us in check, though.
Now, let's rein it in.
Daniel is keeping us in check. And Fed and JJ, just feel free, and Daniel, feel free to like just yell over me anytime. Anything you want to say, just feel free to saying it. I just want to make an announcement, like a public announcement, that this show is brought to you by Pro Tools NYC. Specifically, the sponsor of today is the Pro Tools NYC hats. The 3 hats that you see on the screen. One day it'll be 4. It'll be 4 hats, but for now it's just 3.
Or 4 hats, 3 hats and 1 scarf.
That's right. 3 hats, 1 screen. All right, we can keep going, but we're not going. No. So the three hat capeteers. Can I say?
Anyway, so we're talking about mastering today.
Daniel, what we're supposed to talk about? Remind us.
We're going to talk about some mastering techniques, Bez.
That's right.
Mastering in Pro Tools. I'm very curious as to what you're going to be using today. I'm assuming share your screen.
I can guarantee you this much on this show, that at least, the very least, low expectations you can expect is I will be using Pro Tools.
Yes, good. Okay, That's good to know.
So guys, before I share my screen, what is mastering and how can we talk about what do you guys think mastering is? Whoever wants to, there's no wrong answers, just wrong questions.
I think mastering is something you dump off to someone else, because mixing takes enough work alone as it is. So it's like, yo, anybody wants to do my mastering? Or you can, I don't want to say this publicly, but you can Fiverr it just to, have someone do it so you can concentrate on other things. But
JJ, you're absolutely, this is great. You are the reason why mastering is still alive. is for people to think like you. Like, I don't want to master, I want somebody else to master. We need everyone to think that way, and then we can keep up this mastering game going.
I agree with you, JJ. I feel like a lot of people are intimidated by it, but perhaps they're just not exposed to it, or they haven't really gotten down the rabbit hole enough to just gain that confidence, like I feel like from the perspective of a beginner like myself, I feel like, mastering is basically what makes you polish your work at the end, and where you can find all the flaws that may need to be ironed out. And so, it's a big deal. It's a pretty big deal, because after mastering, what comes after that? Releasing the full production comes after that, right?
After mastering, probably distribution.
Right, exactly.
No, listen, when I think, what something that I don't want to say bothers me about mastering, that I don't want to deal with necessarily, is, do I want to really make sure this works on or it sounds the same leveled on every type of audio speaker? Now, I know you're not doing it on everything, but do I really want to do I want the responsibility of making sure it sounds good on my speakers, my headphones, my AirPods, my everything, you know, and the car speakers is like, how do you know? That I know it's different on YouTube because they tweak the audio a bit. So it's like, so now I gotta go investigate. Okay, is it different on Spotify? Is it different on SoundCloud? Where else I have to go to make sure? And I don't want to be in charge of that per se. So that's why it's like, I don't want to master. That sounds like something tedious, and not because it's just laborious, but it has to be done right. You have to focus on and concentrate on it. And as a songwriter, I just kind of want to focus on songwriting and recording and mixing, you know, if need be.
Well, and you know what? That's a very normal thing because there's a whole world of engineers that literally focus on mastering, because mastering and mixing and mastering are their own art form, because it's essentially shaping the sound, and different genres have a different shaping, whether it's film music, if it's pop, if it's what. So yeah, I mean, it's not, if you're mainly a composer and a songwriter, you probably have and you're working like in the major like echelons of music production, you're passing your music on to an engineer that the company trusts anyway. Very rarely do you have an all-in-one person anyway. That's not usually what happens.
And so my question is this: is it a good idea? Let's say you're an engineer. Is it a good idea to even if you can do it, is it a good idea to master your own product? Because mixing is one thing, you know, engineering, audio design, all these things. Do you want to say, you know what, I want to take up more work? Or would it be smart to say, no, I need to dump this off to someone else? Or is it a project basis? Maybe some projects you're strictly mastering, but whatever project you're on, if you're going to mix, if you're going to master, you don't want to take up so much tedious tasks. I don't know what will be the best approach.
I have my own opinion to that, but I think
Daniel, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think if you're creating something, if you've created a song, you've recorded all the components, I actually think mixing as well as mastering should probably be done by someone else, only because you have a natural audio bias to what you want to hear, and you might not hear everything that someone else hears or a certain way.
I agree.
That being said, I mean, a lot of people do it, but I do think ultimately it's handed off to people that literally have spent years, just like you train years learning an instrument or doing whatever, like people that are mixing, they literally have years and years and years and years under their belt of listening in different ways, being able to sit in a room and not have to necessarily listen to everything on iPhone headphones and stuff. They can listen to their system and be like, oh, I'm going to turn this field to mono really quick because that's how it's going to sound in this speaker. I'm going to tweak this, you know. So but I think the importance of knowing mixing and mastering is the idea of, if you're ever in the room where your engineer's working on your stuff, you can actually give creative and helpful feedback, rather than just being like, I have no idea what that frequency is, I trust you. Also, if you're working on a budget at home and you can't afford an engineer, it's really important that you know a little bit, because being able to mix and master your own stuff and being able to put it out there yourself before you're on a major label saves you money, because we can't all pay, like, let's say however much Bez charges in the real world of mixing and mastering, or my friend Greg. It's like, I know they make a lot of money. Because
what does it start like at $1,500 a song? Or
yeah, like that sounds right. That sounds right.
Yeah.
So, it could be less, but yeah, it could be 1,000.
So that's what I think. I mean, I think it's good to. I think the reason I wanted to work on, or like have this session or however many sessions talking about it, is because I think it's really good for everybody who's creating their own media, whatever it is, to know at least the fundamentals and like what to really work on to sort of get it to a level where you're comfortable at least putting it out there yourself for your initial exposure. But eventually, like, unless you pursue being an engineer, I think if you're the creative portion of it, of creating the song, it's really important to give it to someone who, if you're at a point that you can do that, give it to someone who's been doing it for years. It's just smart. It's like, it's just what you do.
I would love to
even as you said, even if you can do it, you may get some type of like audio fatigue or audio bias, or however you put it, to where, you know.
Yeah. Well,
you said it right, JJ. Bias, because you hear your own stuff, right? And it's so great to get feedback, you know. Just, I mean, it's the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
Need that feedback.
Anyway, so,
absolutely.
So Bez, what are your two? What's your 2 cents?
Oh, what are we guys talking about? I'm just kidding. No, so yeah, no, totally. I think we should know what mixing is. We should know what mastering is. Just like we should know what. Well, we are all like composers, producers, writers, and songwriters, right?
Yeah.
Some of us are like engineers, and I think it's good to know it all and then figure out what can you do for a long period of time, like where do you what's your forte, like what are you good at, so and then just do that. Like I'm good at a lot of things, but I actually do enjoy like training people, so that's why I have the Pro Tools NYC thing. But that's kind of like how I see myself at the moment, right? But at the same time, it's like if you enjoy mastering, then you can just be doing mastering. It's a skill that takes years and years to acquire. It's not something you can just do. But for me, like, why do I know mastering is because I know mixing. Like once you figure out how can you mix, once you get good at mixing, which is complicated in itself, and then you could do the mastering. And I thought that like whatever I thought about mastering, I didn't really learn it anywhere. I was just like kind of like self-taught when it comes to mastering. And then one day I decided to like take, courses and learn from some mastering masters, whatever you call them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, so it's like everything I know plus more, right? So it's like things that I thought is correct, but plus there's also a couple of techniques that I learned on the way. So what I'm trying to say, there's nothing wrong for like a professional to take a professional course. Right. And really, you can do yourself. You should do yourself. You should like get it going, but also you should totally feel free to take a course. I think it's important. And this is not me trying to like plug any kind of like Pro Tools NYC courses, nothing like that. This is just literally, I strongly believe that like knowing how to do things and learning how to do things can only help you. There's no way like learning how to do something is going to be like not beneficial for you, so, and then you could figure out like, do you like JJ songwriting, like do you like songwriting, or like Fed and Daniel, you guys are both like composers, singers. Well, we're all singers kind of, but some of us sing better than others.
Mm-hmm. Some need auto-tune, in other words.
Some put auto-tune to shame.
Yeah.
But like the point is like, does a singer need to know how to master? Probably not. But does it, like, maybe you want to master, maybe you want to work on your own song, like on a demo or on a profession, like you want to distribute your product. It's better to work with people. It's better to work with as many people as possible. It's usually that's the case. But some people are very like hands-on, like they want to do everything themselves. They want to have full control, and that's fine too.
Realistically, how many people work on a song?
You can manage it. I mean,
okay,
you can have one. You can have like 10. It depends. You can have like 5 writers. Like you can have a team of 5 people writing and producing. You can have like 5 singers, and you can have like person mixing, and then you can have a person mastering it. And then if the record label is involved, there's another few more people. You can have a big team making a song, making a hit record, or you can have like one, and it pretty much can.
Is that rare, that one person? Do you know of any songs with one person like did mixing, mastering, just put it out?
I don't know, actually. I don't know if Trent Reznor does his own stuff. I'm not sure. I don't know if Kanye West does their own stuff. I'm really not sure.
Billie Eilish did that for a minute while they were when they were initially.
No, but she didn't. She worked with her brother, didn't she?
Well, that's what I mean, though. It's a team of one.
It's not like one person. It can never be like one person's probably.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying she did it, but I mean, it was her brother. Like, I mean, I don't think anything is done that way now. I think she's big. It's like everything goes through a studio. But basically, that first album, he did all of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I remember when you guys were talking about mastering today. Somebody said something about ears and listening to things, and I just remember the first rule about mastering is big ears. Is you have to develop big ears.
Okay.
some of the mastering stuff, and I think mastering is such a deep topic that we will be talking about it, not just today, but we'll be having multiple sessions about mastering.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, there's no interruption.
Before we move on with mastering, this is kind of tied up to what you guys were talking about, writing and groups of writers, right? So my question would be, in order to perhaps audition or, you know, get an interview and become part of a group, and this, I tie it back to mastering and mixing, like how good does your portfolio need to be for them to listen to it? I mean, does it have to be of a high quality, like it has to be mastered high quality, or can it just be mixed by you personally? And, you know, they will kind of think it's implied that, okay, if this gets mastered, it could have really good potential, or does it already need to be there?
I'm going to answer that question, and you guys can chime in. Unfortunately, today, because you have services like Spotify, what is it called? Sound Better. Spotify's professional service, Sound Better, where people can do work for as little as $100. Sure. And then you have, I mean, there's also people can do work for $1,500. There's a whole scale there. Right. But then there's also Fiverr that JJ mentioned, where people can do work, I guess, for what, $50?
Yeah, you get cheap work done for like 25, 30.
And they can live in like, what's this like town? I worked with a city, Philippines, and that's actually where Avid offices are in Philippines, some of the offices. And people in Philippines, apparently, which I didn't know, every single person is a singer. Like you're born, you just sing immediately. It's just what they do for some reason. Everyone's a singer, and there's like only one audio school in the city. That's very weird. There's a huge, and they always advise me to open up a school in Philippines because there'll be so much potential. They fly here. People from Philippines used to fly before COVID. Used to fly here to my studio and learn from me in Brooklyn, and then fly back to get Avid certification. Literally, not kidding. Even though Avid has an office there in Philippines, it's just really weird how everything is set up. There's definitely something there. But why am I saying that? Because in Philippines, people can help you for a cheaper fee, and
there's a lot of Philippine service on Fiverr, you know, because they'll let you know where they're from, India, the Philippines, here, there. So,
but like specific Philippines, it's good for music. It's good service. Like you'll get fantastic, like whatever you're looking for service, you're gonna get some talented people there, you know, who really know what they're doing. It's just that, like, so that to answer your question, Fed, there is no excuses in today's thingy. What is Fiverr? It's definitely not Fiverr. It's like,
I'll spell it for you.
Yeah, Fiverr. And you guys have to be, not you guys, but people watching on YouTube, you guys have to be in actual Zoom. You have to Zoom with us to see what we are typing. So you are missing all the typing stuff. So that's would be one of the ways to encourage you all to join us on this Zoom call. Yes, it's Fiverr.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, of course, with 2 R's. So yeah, there's really no excuses anymore for your music not to sound good enough, you know, when you present it, you know, that kind of thing. What's that other service that masters it, which is horrible, but it exists?
That you can send your stuff in and they'll
it's like a Wally. It's like, you know what I'm talking about, like a Wally, like it's like a robot that receives your information and then just kind of like sends it back to you. Lander.
Okay, yeah. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. Don't use it. I'm not trying to start beef with Lander. I'm keeping. I'm just.
There goes a sponsorship.
I know, right?
I don't want to be sponsored by Lander, whatever it's called, Lander. I prefer not to be sponsored by Lander. I don't have anything against them. I just have some things against them.
Yeah.
Like this specific thing.
Like, you can't have a formula do it automatically because every piece is different.
No way. What do you got? There's no way I'm going to send something to a robot to master because of how detailed. But to defend Lander, is that how you say it? Lander, right? Lander,
yeah.
Landar, right? I think that's how you spell it. Lander.
Yep.
They charge cheap. They charge like $30 to master something. It's quick turnaround. It just makes it like it EQs and compresses automatically and sends it back to you. And so the trick there is to keep which would be a good mastering here lesson thing. No matter who's mastering your work, you want to keep your headroom I want to say 10 decibels, but maybe even 12 decibels. If I was to work on it, if I'm mixing something, my headroom would be between 12 and 6. And what I'm talking about, like in Pro Tools, and you guys probably know this.
I thought the standard was 14.
Yeah, no, not for me. Yeah, that's you don't need 14, especially today because everything's so loud. So 14 is maybe back in the.
Before you start, you said airs. Airs is the biggest thing. Go ahead.
I'm not really starting. It's gonna be like on and off screen sharing. I just
wanted to know what is your, from experience, and especially with you and Daniel, from what's the longest you suspend on a song? Because I've heard things as, hey, nothing more than 30-40 minutes on a song.
No, that's wrong. Master. I mean, yeah, you could master.
Because they say, of course, you get air fatigue or audio bias or whatever.
Yeah, you get an hour. I could, if you're a professional, you don't need. I don't think you need more than an hour to master a song, but you could probably do you could spend a couple of hours on mastering a song. You could probably do the whole EP in your day. Like you should work on an entire. Like I feel if somebody sends you an EP or an album, you should be able to master it in your days of like one day of work. I don't see why you should take more than one day.
But you do need to step away like occasionally.
Yeah, maybe 2 days. Let's be fair. Let's give it 2 days that's fair. Like your volume should be like 2 to 4 albums per week, or maybe 2 albums per week or 3 albums. I don't know. Depends on the people. It depends on the person, right?
Or in regards to the same album while taking breaks, because you don't want to hear the same thing over and over. So that one album should take you it could take you all. Oh no, actually one song. I'll say, let me focus on a song. One song could be like an hour without going crazy. Going crazy, not in the sense of you getting tired, but just hearing the same thing over and over.
Well, like.
And then you may not make the best decisions when you're constantly hearing the same thing, and you may not hear a difference.
Well, the other factor that we're not covering is if you're working with the client and you're going back and forth, it doesn't really matter how fast you get something done, because if you give it to them and they're like, no, I want this, I want to hear this more. And even though you may disagree with them, as the engineer, it's what they want to hear. So that, I think, is what ends up taking the longest time, because if you're to the mastering phase, you're right. I mean, it should be. I think my buddy Greg, we had like a 10 or 12 track album, and he could have, if he wasn't so busy, he probably could have gotten it done easily within a week or just a few days. But we had a lot of back and forth, so it probably took, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks just to really, because we wanted something specific, like we wanted a specific sound. I think that's what could end up taking the longer time. But I mean, I think Bez is right. I also don't really work on songs. Most of my stuff is like 200 track orchestral stuff, so it takes me a long time just to mix, and then getting into the master phase is a whole other thing.
Right. Exactly.
You did mention before, I don't want to kill the whole session with this, but you did mention before that it's pretty much you didn't say a waste of time, but you said you need hardware in order to do proper mastering. Like without, and that because you did say the reason why it's so expensive because the person needs a certain hardware in order to get it right. So if you don't have that hardware,
that loops back to the big ears.
Oh, okay.
Mastering starts and just to follow up also on Daniel's thing, we're not talking about LUFS, right? Not the LUFS. We're talking about 6. I would need like 12 to 6 decibels of just decibels of headroom.
Okay.
I need about space, I just need the space.
All right.
You can do less. Everyone is encouraged to do 12 and below. It's just that I personally do it 12 to 6 because on my meter here, this is the last thing that hits. Like one of the last things before it hits the what do you call it? The stores, like the distribution, right? I would have like master meter here. And this master meter is, I mean, I have this always, like the master track and the master meter, like the master track and master meter, it's just like I always have this. And I like, if I'm mixing something, like you see even here in this plugin, this comes with Pro Tools.
We can't see.
Oh, wow.
I don't think you're sharing
Okay, so like you see on the master meter that comes from Pro Tools, like even they do here like this. They give you, this is literally right here, like this tiny space is where your mix is. Yeah. And then from 6 to 0, this is like reserved for like final work. Okay. Because your final work should sit between -6 and 0. But if you are like mixing and you know you're not mastering it, then go ahead and mix here up to -6. And the reason why I say -6 because you could see it, like it's like, you know, very easy on the eye. Like, okay, this is for mixing, this is for mastering. You know, it's like two sides here, and just mix here. And then if you're mixing and you're the only one who's gonna be mastering, go ahead and like utilize more of it. You know, you could use this. It's okay, but like the concept is that the finished work is gonna sit between -6 and 0, whatever, you know, depending what you're doing. There's other meters. This is like not by all means the meter that you should be like really focusing on. This is just one of the meters. There's so many other meters that are involved. Like there are tons of producers of meters, and like one of them can be, for example, I personally have at the moment during the Zoom call is like a Pro limiter has a limiter has a LUFs. Like it has 1, 2, 3, like 4 indicators. And this is something else, right? When you're, you know, when you're mixing television, it should be at -24. When you're mastering for Spotify, I think it's like, what is it? -16, -14. It's anywhere between 14 and 18. Daniel, did you say something?
Yeah, I think it's -14, but they also have a louder one that I think is a little
12. I know you can do. I was gonna say 12. I don't want to like push. I don't want to encourage the world to be so loud, because then what happens? Your stuff is just so loud. There's like no dynamics.
It's definitely getting louder. Yeah.
And it's like boring without dynamics. So there's a couple of things here, like, as far as like the master meter. But what I want to say is, right. So you have your you do want to have headroom, right? This would be the headroom. So if you mix until -6. Then this gives you headroom. And when you're mastering, you're going to be like entering this headroom, right? And the big ears conversation that we had was you're going to be using, it doesn't really matter actually whether you use hardware or software. I always thought it mattered, honestly. But it like matters, but not tremendously. It does matter. It will sound better. There will be a certain sound, certain character that you can't possibly get from digital. You should definitely go ahead and have some analog gear, right? But for mastering, one of the most important things as far as gear is like to have like a ADDA, like a analog to digital, digital to analog converter. Because when you're going from your digital studio to like analog, to speakers and whatever, you want to make sure that you have a very good converter for mastering people. That's really important. When you're going from 20, because the session is usually going to be in, oh, sorry. The session, do you see this? Mm-hmm. Setup session. That's going to be, usually I would prefer to be here, 48, 24-bit wave interleave. I mean, look, some mastering houses, like there's like some very advanced, like I used to, when I was signed to a label and we were thinking of working with Sterling's. I think we worked a little bit with Sterling Sound. I think it's called Sterling Sound. It's in New York. It's like a very fancy mastering house. And the label might have sent them like 96 kilohertz, not 48. I mean, but like even during the big sessions, like on the board, like SSL board or whatever, our digital, like the session setup sometimes was just like 16-bit and just 4416. Now, like as of today, I'm definitely doing 24-bit and 48 for sure. And I'm always using BWF. That's the broadcasting wave format. It has metadata, tags, you can like tag it. So all these are important. Like pan depth, I probably do like -3 on that. We could talk more about that later. But like I'm just saying that like probably when you're mastering, you probably want to kind of have like if they're sending you, you kind of want to establish as a mastering engineer, like you kind of want to establish what are you receiving from people. That's also, I feel like, important. Like you don't want to be receiving crap. You want to receive like mixes that are well. One of the rules actually, which no one talks about this anymore in any courses, is because people just want to make money. But if you receive a crappy mix, you're supposed to send it back. You're not supposed to master a crappy mix. And so you tell your client, I'm trying to master this, but I can't because of this and this. You gotta fix it in the mix, and then I'll try to master it.
Can you give an example of how a bad mix affects the mastering?
Yes, there's a lot to it. So for example, it starts off with like making sure that like the file you're receiving matches your setup session. That's very important.
Okay.
You don't want to be converting anything, upscaling or downscaling. You want to like keep it as is, and you're receiving a stereo file, right? One stereo file. You're not receiving anything but a stereo file, just a mix with headroom, with some headroom, right? Like let's pretend there's headroom here. Like there's like with some headroom, right?
Okay.
Stuff like that. And the other thing is, well, okay. And then what I later on found out what I can do is I would always receive and I wish I would have done this sooner. I only received like the mix, like the mix that people label mix, labeled mix, and it's to be sent to master, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I also should have been receiving the instrumental, a cappella. So not just, the stems, not as a mastering engineer, but people don't talk about that too much. I mean, people on that higher level, like where you're paying somebody $400 or whatever it is, like some decent money to master, it starts to be like, okay, send me, because mastering is about like EQing and compressing, right? So they want to make sure that they can do their job as a mastering engineer, right? So as a mastering engineer, you want to receive like as much info as possible, not like too much, because you don't want to be sent. I don't think you do. I don't think I want like the bass and then just all the guitars and all. I mean, some people could do it. If you have a relationship like that with a mastering engineer, you can, but that's already like kind of like mixing, and you should kind of mix it first, right? You mix it first. And then in the mix, this is JJ, you were saying, how can we fuck up a mix?
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, if it's too bassy, or if it's like, in the EQ area where in the EQ area where like voice, some snare and a voice can be, like a snare and a voice can be like they can kind of be in the same frequency. You can't like all the voice you polish, the snare gets loud too, because like they're sharing a frequency per se, or guitar. There's definitely instruments that share frequencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
essentially, if I may, Bez, really quickly,
of course.
essentially, the best thing what we're referring to, or what Bez is referring to, and this is what I have to do when I'm sending stuff to Greg, is he asks for stems. And if you guys don't know what stems are, they're essentially sections, similar sounding sections of a particular song or whatever. So let's say you have sort of your typical, you have a couple guitars, you have a bass, you have a drum set, you have a singer, you have backup singers, you have some synths, you have a keyboard. Okay, so you have all these things going on. And so after you've sort of mixed them, or someone has mixed them, typically what they'll do is they will bounce a stem of different sections that are maybe similar. So like the rhythm section, the backup voices, the solo voices, and everything. So while it's all mixed, if they're together, they are separate for the mastering engineer, because the mastering engineer might want to attenuate, say, the bass, but because the bass is bounced with the bass or bass drum, he's like, oh, well, I can't screw with that too much because then I'll screw up the bass drum. Or like Bez was saying, for the high frequencies, say you want to use like a de-esser, okay, but the de-esser is going to affect the sibilance of the hi-hat just as much as it's going to affect the sibilance of like the high singer. So you need to have all these different components. You don't want them like bass guitar, like unless you're friends with the guy and maybe he wants to mix them, but they should be everything should be mixed. Okay. And then then there should be bounces of stems of similar categories. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, that makes.
And especially like to simplify, you can. And this is something that I would ask for these days. Like, if I'm gonna be mastering something these days, like it would be instrumental, a cappella, and TV track. Instrumental, a cappella, TV track, and the original track and the original mix. What's the TV track, guys? Anybody know what a TV track is?
No.
Daniel, do you know what TV track is?
I think so. I'm wondering if I think I.
Okay, you want me to say? It's basically the entire production without the lead voice.
Oh, okay.
Without the lead voice.
When I have to make stuff for library music, I basically have to stem everything out, and then they'll ask for separate stuff because, like commercial or TV music, they're like, oh well, we really like the cello part, but we don't want the voice.
Absolutely.
Or we really want, so they want to use all these different combinations. And honestly, it's good for you as a music producer because all those things get licensed. You get paid for them no matter what. I mean, depending on what commercial they're being used for.
Yeah.
I just had one used for a Discover history commercial in the UK featuring Shiba Inu cat food or something. Did not pay a lot of money. But you know, they only used a section of the piece. So I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, and actually what Daniel's saying is awesome because as composers and writers, and producers, it's good. Honestly, it's good to have, and Pro Tools allows you to do multi-stem. Like it's good to have stems. It's good to have different versions, right? And in Pro Tools, like it's so easy to just go to File and Bounce, Mix, and look. You see the mix source. You can have like so many sources. You could output like instrument, you could instrumental and so forth. Like instrumental, a cappella. Like you can output a lot of different mixes simultaneously. If you set up your session right with buses and auxiliary tracks and proper sends and groups, you in one bounce you can get, because before that was impossible, but now you can get like all of the things we just mentioned. As a mixer, as a producer mixer, you can get like the stems to the mastering engineer pretty easy and quick and fast. And then I would receive it if I'm the mastering engineer, I would receive them, and I wouldn't have just the mix here, right? I would have like the mix, the blah blah blah. Because if like I need in this part to maybe augment just the voice, then I can do that. I can go into like, let's say my gain clip view, and then just elevate or the opposite, like make it all softer in a particular area. And then get out of that, and then I did that. And, I mean, I can't do that on the whole production. I can only do that on the voice. If I had another, like if I had another track that was, one is like basically, let's make it fit to window, right? Like one is mix and one is like, a cappella per se. I don't know how to spell a cappella. Is it 2 L's, right? 2 L's.
It's
yeah. And the A, yeah, there you go.
It's like that, right? I can't remember if there's like 2 L's or not.
I think it is.
I think so. I think that's correct. And some people actually, believe it or not, make it one word like that in production. Like if you go to like DJ pools, if you go to like places, like they just usually make it. But I know it's 2 word, but
I mean, it's fine as long as people know what you're saying.
Exactly. You know what it is. It means voice, right? All the vocals. So that's what you would get, right? And then you have more freedom, more movement. And the big ears, so yeah, and then the big ears is basically very important. It's very important. There are a couple of things I want to discuss about mastering, like this kind of like the origins, like the need for mastering, but we can revisit that next time. But about the big ears, because I think like that's like so important and not everyone knows about this. And I didn't know about this in the beginning. It's you create a room. You part of mastering, the most important thing, it's not per se the hardware that you tweak to, like not the EQ or the compressor. By far the most important thing is the room and the speakers and your ears. So that's like the most important thing about mastering is where do you sit in a room? Where are the speakers that you see the back, my museum speakers over there in the background? You know, where are you sitting? Are you forming that triangle? That's very important. Are you perceiving, are you perceiving the loudness properly? Are you, and what speakers do you have? Are they mastering speakers? Do they have like, are they super cool speakers that like make everything super bassy? That would be like the wrong speaker to use, right? You want to use like flat response speaker. And the most important thing is, well, we can talk more about like placement. Like you can't place it like, I think it's the corner. You can't place it in the corners because it bounces off funny. You can't have like one in the corner. Like over there, my two speakers are just like, there's like a wall. They're kind of like next to a wall. That's almost correct. Walls are good, but you got to have like at least, there's a couple of feet from the wall, maybe 3 feet. There's like some limitations to, I know rooms, like especially me, I'm in New York, like New York space, it's like you get limits on that. So you got to work out the details, like how can I have like a couple of feet from the wall? Everything has to be symmetrical, ear level. And then you got to have the speakers that are like sort of like for mastering speakers. And those can cost, if you're really taking it seriously, like those speakers can cost more than the studio itself. Like some speakers go, it's like a car. It's like buying a car. Some of those speakers cost a lot of money. That's kind of what you're paying when you're paying that mastering dude or girl for mastering your stuff, and not the algorithm. I know why Daniel's laughing. And you're paying, basically you're almost like renting those speakers from them as well. Like you're paying because they have to pay that monthly fee on those speakers. So part of the fee, the reason why it does cost money to master something is because they're mastering engineers also like paying somebody else from your fee to upkeep his studio gear and everything. It's so expensive.
Yeah,
so listen,
their studio mortgage.
Yeah, there's studio mortgage. Thank you. Besides the rent, there's just like the speaker mortgage, right? Because it's mastering speakers specifically to enjoy and not have ear fatigue. That's where the big ears comes from, because you cannot use headphones. You're not allowed to use headphones when you are mastering. You have to feel comfortable and you have to listen. The most important thing about mastering is also you have to listen on, this is crazy, I didn't know that, on 2 speakers minimum on 2 levels. So you have to have the big speakers that represent properly the low end, because it's very difficult to get a proper low end. So you have to get speakers that represent proper low end. And there has to be a volume that you yourself set for yourself and no one else. The volume of your choice, of your comfort, where you comfortably and not painfully and not painful to the neighbors can listen to low end bass. Like if you're mixing trap all day for 8 hours, you got to be able to get up and go take a walk. And when they talk to you, you got to be able to know what they're saying. Like it has to be like super comfort level place. And not one thing I didn't know is on your volume bar, on your whatever the thing used for the volume, you gotta like put a tape or something. It has to be always the same place so that you can have a point of reference and you can learn how to reference everything. So you gotta, part of mastering, very important, is to set your speakers. You have your big speakers, you send it to one type of level for loud, then you find a soft level, and the big speakers should also be able to play back the mastering at a soft level, a level where you can actually talk with somebody, like we can have a conversation while the music is playing, the big speakers. So that's one. So only two levels, loud and soft, no middle. You can only be either loud or you gotta be soft, and you can only have the two. You can't like, maybe it's you gotta put like a little tape, like I'm at 3 o'clock on the loud and at like, what is it, 9 o'clock on the soft, something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's the big speakers. And then you have near field monitors. You have the small speakers, and it can be as shitty as like computer speakers, but don't do that. They should be some reasonable speakers, but they're small. And same thing on the loud level on that, and the soft level. And then you can't test the bass on the small speakers. You're testing the overall vibe, like everything, the balance of everything else.
Right.
And that is just listening back. That's not even tweaking. That you do all of that before you can even do the EQ or like, a lot of it is listening, and because the tweaking happens at like minuscule, like at a very small increments. The tweaking of EQ or it happens at a small steps, baby steps when you do it. You don't go like 3 decibels of like low end, let's increase. No, that you don't do that in mastering. You only do a little bit at a time. You do little baby steps. And all of a sudden, when you do everything correctly, you've got yourself a nice mastered song. And we can talk more about that next time.
Okay.
So that was kind of fun.
Yes, it was.
Pro Tools talk, and we're gonna learn. We gotta figure out how we're all gonna talk more and more. Not just me, but I feel sometimes I don't talk too much. It's just that sometimes I'm just trying to get a point across.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
It was necessary. It was very necessary.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
And we didn't get to talk about politics thanks to Daniel. So
we did not talk about politics or COVID
or
anything else.
Yeah,
which could be a good thing.
Conspiracies.
Yeah, could be a good thing.
That's gonna have to be saved for the next session before we press record.
Oh man. That was a good session.
So thanks. I don't know how to so how do we end this? What would be a good how in the future, what should I hit the record? Should I stop? Like, when should we stop? Like, how does it work?
I think what we should do is we do a quick we do a little like not recap, but we should discuss what we want to sort of cover next time. And then you'll just be like, all right, and that concludes the day. Thank you for coming to Pro Tools Talk. Thank you, guests, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, and so yeah, and I'll say...
Thank you, Lander, for your support. And
right, exactly. So I'll say, okay, thank you, guys. This was the show. I want to open up to Q&A. Maybe we'll get some Q&As. And like, if anybody, I mean, if it's, maybe some Q&As. And let's talk about... So this was good. We will be continuing the... talk about mastering and the importance of mastering and the importance of using Pro Tools for mastering, and importance of maybe taking a mastering course at Pro Tools NYC.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I'll do it because you run it, but I will shamelessly plug it only because I'm doing the game audio class right now, and initially and still I'm frustrated with it because of other components. But
it's fair.
Because
they have to make you make a video game. The only way to pass the course is if you produce a video game that makes a lot of money.
Oh, you haven't told me that.
But yeah, it's the final exam. That's how you get a certification.
So part of the frustration is you have to learn this program called Unity, and it was like, okay, well, I'm already learning how to use Pro Tools, so thanks, Bez. But the important thing about game audio, and for you guys to consider, for anyone listening, and I promise I wasn't put up to this, but as I've been going through it, they actually cover a lot of stuff, the very, very fundamental of a lot of stuff that we talked about today when it comes to mixing and mastering, creating different cues, because for some reason they decided that game audio is where you should insert that information. It should be in all of it, but everything that's covered in game audio is like very pertinent to essentially anything you create. So it talks about getting a good mix for vocals, getting a good mix for the cinematic, like all this kind of stuff. It's actually really good bass, and so it's been nice to see that. A lot of the stuff I sort of knew, but for people that are looking for like, oh, where's like a good like place to start from in a mix or whatever, it's actually a really good course for it. That's all
I personally, that's my favorite course. The game audio course is by far my favorite course of all the Pro Tools courses. I haven't done the Atmos course yet. Atmos course yet. It's hard to say. Atmos in general is a hard word to say. Atmos, yeah. It's I think the game audio course is like super fun. Maybe it's because I do use Pro Tools so much and now I get to use Unity and I was like, ew, Unity. But I do think it's just fun. It's just super fun. And then when we get the last chapter talks about suspending a car in the air and like recording different engines.
I remember that was the way you teased me into. He was like, no, it's great. It's going to show you how to record a car. It's going to be awesome.
So cool. It's like, how often do you get to suspend the car and record?
I'm not suspending a car. I don't have the means to suspend
I think it's so fun. I think
it's
exciting to learn how to do all that.
It is. It's important.
You know, but yeah, so this was the Pro Tools talk. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you guys. Thank you, Daniel, Fed, and JJ for being here. I'm Bez. And see you next week, Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
Take care, guys. See you next week.
Peace.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
All right, man.
So, and now I'm going to stop the recording, but I also have to stop the share.